When black folks started revolutions, they never had the firepower or the resources to fight their oppressors. Where was Wakanda? You know, that ends today.
The world's gonna start over, and this time we're on top.
The sun will never set on the Wakandan Empire.
The revolution will be live.
Black Panther is the story of a lost prince of Wakanda trying to use Wakanda's power to avenge the alleged oppression of black people in the diaspora. Eric, famously known as Killmonger, is a perfect vessel for an American political ideology that seeks to redress perceived oppression through revenge and violence. Eric's arc of vengeance is the central animating force in Black Panther. Everyone else simply reacts to the destruction left in his wake, including the movie's own protagonist. The African backdrop of Wakanda is simply scaffolding for a modern Black American ideology that Eric represents, an ideology that garnered him some sympathy in the real world, believe it or not. While Wakanda is an ethno-state with a milquetoast version of the same Black American ideology as Eric, its isolationist traditionalism contrasts his imperialist worldview. Eric's ideology has some real-world implications and beckons some important questions. What does Eric really stand for, and how does it square up with reality in Africa and America? Eric is the son of a Wakandan envoy in Jobu who lived in the United States of America and grew sympathetic to the issues in the Black American community around him.
Your uncle fell in love with an American woman. They had a child. The hardships he saw there radicalized your uncle.
All over the planet, our people suffer because they don't have the tools to fight back. With vibranium weapons, they could overthrow every country and Wakanda could rule them all the right way.
For his newfound allegiance to his Black American community, Jobu is killed by T'Chaka, the Black Panther, who is sworn to protect Wakanda's secrecy and people.
Your uncle betrayed us.
No.
He helped Claw steal the vibranium.
No.
You will return home at once, or you will face the council and inform them of your crimes.
He drew his weapon on me. Your father killed his own brother to save my life.
Eric learns about this and holds a personal grudge against the African nation, rising through the ranks in the US Army as an expert marksman with the Wakandan throne as his ultimate target. He makes his way to Wakanda and beats T'Challa in ritual combat to become the new king of Wakanda. Eric's personal story arc up to taking the Wakandan throne is well-founded and internally consistent for a villain. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for his ideology. Eric believes that other races, especially white people, oppress the black people in his community and hold them back from their true potential. He is an ethno-imperialist that sees Wakanda's resources as a means to avenge his people by conquering the rest of the world, even if it means killing innocent civilians in the process.
We're gonna send vibranium weapons out to our war dogs. They'll arm oppressed people all over the world, so they can finally rise up and kill those in power, and their children, and anyone else who takes their side.
In reality, take out the impractical ethno-imperialism and you still have a worldview held by a faction of Black Americans and progressives.
The only way to close a wealth gap is by transferring wealth.
We have to abolish policing.
Reparations.
Has anybody here ever heard of the French Revolution before? Does anybody here know what happened to the people who did not get on board with the French Revolution? Say it louder. Say it louder.
God said that he created his chosen people, which will be the so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans of today, to be above all other nations of people that are upon the face of the earth.
Caucasians?
Yep.
Chinese? Japanese?
Arabs. He created them to be destroyed, right? So
wait, I was created to be destroyed?
Yes, because that's why the Most High God says,
what you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
This ideology takes the historical oppression of black people through slavery and segregation in the United States, points out some racially disparate outcomes in selected socioeconomic categories today, and then pushes vengeance and reversal as the solutions to these problems. On its face, victimhood is sympathetic and disparate outcomes can be some evidence of discrimination, but a lot doesn't really pass the smell test. Without becoming too academic in this video, this ideology ignores evidence of upward mobility and covariates that otherwise explain these disparate outcomes. It also externalizes all blame while diminishing personal agency. Eric's character arc itself debunks this fallacy, as he is able to advance through the US Armed Forces on the merits of being an effective killing machine for his country. Contrary to most beliefs, Black Americans are the most socioeconomically affluent Black population in the world, far exceeding Black populations in Africa and the Caribbean. This phenomenon is not limited to the Black population, as European immigrants to the United States outperform their counterparts in their home countries. It has everything to do with America.
If you're born in the US, it really doesn't matter the condition of your birth. What matters is what you inherit from your nurturing, from your environment, whether or not you're going, I'm just from the standpoint of having been born with little. You can always get out of that. There are a lot of people who are born in situations where they say, I'll never get out of this. So they won't. I say to people who say, well, I would like to have done so and so and so. So, well, you could have done it. So, well, I couldn't get out of here. Man, the bus runs every day.
And that's why millions around the world try to migrate to the United States instead of the other way around. Eric's vitriol is not only misguided but also insanely regressive. He sees people not as individuals but as representatives of their ethnic groups, where each individual bears the burden of negative interactions and is culpable for the sins of their ancestors. To Eric, destroying the lives of people from other races is necessary to break the Black race from their oppressors. The irony is, for a guy that claims to be fighting for Black people, Eric starts his journey by killing the Black people in Wakanda and desecrating their culture. If anything, he is a cautionary tale against this divisive tribal ideology. A politically correct ideology that sees social injustice in everything except its own prescriptions. An ideology we have come to know as woke. On the other hand, there isn't much to be said about Wakanda as an opposing cultural force. Wakanda is a contradictory combination of ancient socio-political structures and advanced technology cobbled together by the mystical plot contrivance that is vibranium. Despite being an isolationist ethno-state that was never colonized and stood by while the rest of Africa was, many Wakandans have the same racist vitriol as Eric. In the real world, most Africans do not live their day-to-day lives blaming the phantom white man for their woes. African countries gained their independence from colonial rule in the 20th century. Around the same time, most other colonized territories, for example in Asia, did. Yet today, hardly any African countries have kept up, despite possessing immense natural wealth and somehow also very wealthy politicians. Make of that what you will. While Wakanda is a nonsensical collection of African cultures and stereotypes, one thing it gets right is that Africa is still traditional in many ways. Eric shows no regard for Wakandan customs and destroys their cultural implements, putting him in stark opposition to the traditional worldview of Wakanda. This is one of many differences between the woke Black American progressivism and African traditionalism. It's important to keep in mind that many Black Americans are not woke identitarians, just like many Africans are not traditional and indifferent about race. But this is simply where the biggest difference lies. One ideology is defined by vindictiveness and retribution by people living in the wealthiest nation on earth. The other is defined by traditions of people largely preoccupied with staving off absolute poverty in developing nations. Ultimately, this is a much more complex conversation than I could cover briefly here, so let me know what you think in the comments down below.
I don't want peace. I want problems, always.
Until next time, you stay tuned and stay cool.
Here's the thing you got to remember. When you talk about racial and you talk about discrimination, maybe, what if he just wasn't good enough? See, it's so easy to just say, oh, it's because of this. It's because of racism. Oh, I didn't get the job because of that. Maybe you weren't good enough. You can change laws, but you can't legislate people into loving you.
If you go back into the 20s, you find that a married couple families were much more prevalent among blacks then. As late as 1930, blacks had lower unemployment rates than whites. So all these things that we complain about and attribute to the era of slavery, those things should have been worse in the past than in the present.